www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you choose information.
Like they say, it's short. You can break it a little. Talk from left and right of Nigerian football. The Nigerian Football Federation says
Nice junction, like so many other junctions within the metropolis, have one
Africans and Africans in diaspora is taking place in Abuja. Courtesy of station dislocated to face the structure of the people as a nation. What is the
President Muhammadu Buhari says prosecution of persons who have stolen national resources will begin in a matter of weeks.
Federal government directs Ministry of Special Duties to intensify efforts as reuniting families scattered in different camps for IDPs.
The National Emergency Management Agency continues evacuation of returnees from Cameroon. 7 new births are recorded at Mubi Transit Camp.
What we are trying to do is to move the passenger ahead, and then we are riot trucks that will now move their luggage and go with them.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we examine the federal government's opening of Treasury Single Account, TSA, as a tool for enhancing transparency in the public accounting system.
Alright, according to the Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. John Otula, the federal government has a fragmented banking arrangement for revenue and payment transactions. Now, to the extent that there are more than 10,000 bank accounts with ministries, departments, and agencies domiciled in multiple commercial banks across the country.
Well, Mr. Otula, at a recent forum in Lagos, said that the multiplicity of bank accounts made it impossible to establish government's consolidated cash position at any point in time, now with pockets of idle cash balances held in MDA's account at a time that government itself was out seeking to borrow money.
Now, the present administration, led by President Muhammad Buhari, considers this scenario as quite untidy and unacceptable. Now, this is even more so that the new administration is bent on fighting corruption and instilling probity and accountability in public finance. Now, to match words with action, the government introduced some new measures. The latest being, of course, the directive that all monies accruing to the federal government be henceforth remitted into a treasury single account, TSA.
Well, the Treasury single account is a bank account or a set of linked bank accounts through which the government transacts all its receipts and payments and then gets a consolidated view of its cash position at any time. Vice President Professor Yemi Oshibanjo, while giving the directive for the opening of the TSA, said that it was part of measures aimed specifically at promoting transparency as well as facilitating compliance with Sections 80 and 162 of the 1999 Constitution as amended.
And though the TSA became operational in 2012 with a focus on payments, it was only operated as a pilot scheme. Now, the scheme involves 217 ministries, departments, and agencies at MDAs in Abuja. But by last year, 2014, the scheme was extended to all the MDAs outside Abuja. Now, this necessitated the execution of all federal government-related payments through an electronic platform, of course, called the e-payment.
That's correct. As you rightly said, the building blocks for the TSA were established in 2012, and now we are seeing it come to fruition. Now, apart from seeking to plug loopholes in the National Treasury, which have over the years been exploited by certain public officers, now the implementation of the TSA, analysts say, saved the government about 500 billion naira. That was in the past. Now, the TSA system will also now help to consolidate government cash balances and give the Minister of Finance a unique oversight of all government cash flows, and then bring about improvement in budgetary control and monitoring, or budgetary monitoring and control.
Well, Kingsley, you know, like every new policy, there have been very mixed reactions to this new directive. Of course, while some are looking at the long-term benefit, others have expressed concern about the short-term impact, especially on the asset base of commercial banks. Kingsley. Now, the feeling from this letter group is that the measure will adversely affect banks, causing cash liquidity problems and job loss. It is also been estimated that withdrawal of MDA's accounts will cost the banks about 600 billion naira in money deposits. Now, on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall be taking a close look at government's latest strategy of blocking money leakages and dealing a lasting blow to diversion of public funds meant for project development. I am Claire Dilabatu-Razak, and this is Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola, also joined by welcoming you to this edition of the program, Good Morning Nigeria, as always, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA. Of course, we're starting the news presently, but just to remind you that at the course of the program, we have our regular segments: business, newspaper review, foreign, and others. We're going over now to the newsroom to join Rhoda Abu for the morning news. Rhoda.
Thanks, Kingsley. Hello there, a warm welcome. Good to have you join us here. It is now authoritative that prosecution of persons who have stolen national resources will begin in a matter of weeks. President Muhammad Buhari, who announced this at a meeting with members of the National Peace Committee, said his administration is irrevocably committed to doing everything within its power to break the vicious circle of corruption, joblessness, and insecurity.
Ensuring that the gains and the blessings God has given us come to fruition. People need to be encouraged. And we need to reaffirm, that this is our country. The only thing we can all collectively be opposed to is injustice, iniquity, corruption. And in that regard, we all had one single conversation.
In the meantime, President Muhammad Buhari has directed the Ministry of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs to intensify efforts at reuniting families currently scattered in different bids for internally displaced persons in parts of the country. The President gave the directive when officials of the ministry briefed him on the implementation of their mandate.
That we do in Nigeria. So he has approved that he wants us for next year that the project we will have is to specifically intervene in the Northeast. Not just the Northeast. He approved also for Bakassi and he approved intervention, for us to track, to trace and to support in the amnesty program.
From Nigeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Yusuf Maitama Sule, has called on Nigerians to give the present administration the needed support in the efforts to bring about peace, security and corruption-free society. Speaking to State House correspondents after a first visit to the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, the other statement says the country has over time had to battle with twin problems of bad image abroad and insecurity. Nigeria, he says, needs the kind of good leadership that's being displayed presently by President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo to address these issues. He described the administration as a new era which will produce positive change. The international community, he says, is already giving support and showing great understanding.
Tell them if they do wrong or if they go wrong. Support them if they do the right thing, but do it in a responsible, constructive manner. That we shall do. So we have confidence in them. We don't want them to fail, and by the grace of God, they will not fail.
The management of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, has appointed 4 new group executive directors to man the 4 new directorates approved by President Muhammadu Buhari. The new group managing director, Dr. Emmanuel Ibeka Chukwu, announced that the new appointments are in line with federal government's aspiration to transform the corporation into a lean, efficient, business-focused, transparent and accountable national oil company in keeping with international best practices. The corporation also retired 38 top management staff, reducing the number from 122 to 83, also in line with the aspirations to reposition the corporation towards personnel have been recruited from the private sector into top management cadre to jumpstart a new business outlook to enhance the operational environment as a profit-driven business as against the current civil service orientation. And now to National Assembly matters, the Senate has expressed concerns over what it calls unfair trade practices by electricity distribution companies, ISCO, against electricity consumers in the country, and called on the regulatory agencies to ensure rescue the situation. At Tuesday's plenary, senators expressed reservation on some issues of power privatization like bulk charges and allocation of meters.
Further, that the same areas in the country are still billed through the estimated billing system.
Consumers are complaining, people are in abject poverty, people have no job, and the electricity company are charging exorbitant amounts and providing no power. Every week I buy recharge card to 10,000 naira for that same meter. The meter doesn't work.
We must not scratch this matter from the surface. Taking about the discourse alone, you know the problem.
In fact, some companies have not even taken off. So we should not expect magic.
Similarly, the House of Representatives has adopted a motion urging the federal government to recruit more qualified persons into the Nigerian police force. While considering the motion at Tuesday's plenary, the House observed that Nigerian police force is faced with the challenge of inadequate police officers and men, which adversely affects effective policing.
And there is no provision in place of replacing them.
The welfare of police in this country, how out of all the arms of those in the security services, I believe is the poorest. This motion should be supported and adequate provision be made for the people.
Experts in Nigeria's broadcast industry have been meeting with other key players in the sector to evolve ideas for content development as the nation prepares for a national switch over to digital broadcasting. The British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, has been quite active in the last couple of days, having constituted a media action interactive forum which centered on content development and revenue generation in a digitized Nigeria.
Development. You can see that quite a lot of the number of NGO people that are here, very experienced people. The idea is to share experiences, see how we can improve on the content that we have today.
It's expected that we will have committed. So at the end, I hope to gain more exposure of content building, which is the aim thing now.
We want to know how other stations are doing it so we can come together and speak with one voice, especially as digitization is being expected. We need to know what to do, how to fashion out our content, so we can make money.
And now to health matters. The fight against counterfeit and substandard drugs is yielding positive results in Nigeria. A recent survey by the Ministry of Health and USAID revealed that the circulation of substandard anti-malaria medicines has dropped from 20% to 3.6%. This is made known at the Stakeholders Forum to disseminate the report on anti-malaria medicines quality health in Abuja.
We are all aware the last administration launched, and based on that, we will see how we can review some of these available drugs to make sure that they are affordable and people can reach them. I hope that by the time we already have 4 pharmaceutical companies, Nigerian companies approved, we hope that by the time more companies get approval, Nigerians will now have access to affordable medicines, including anti-malaria drugs.
Also, 7 new deaths were recorded at the Mubi transit camp of the Nigerian returnees from the Republic of Cameroon. This is as the National Emergency Management Agency said it has transported 5,762 returnees to the internally displaced camp in Yola, Adamawa State.
What we are trying to do is to move the passengers first, and then we are via truck that will now move their baggages and go with them. Also, you notice that all the people that will be loading so far are women and children, and a few special people like old men, sick persons.
And lastly, directors and chief road traffic officers of the Federation, DROs, are in Abuja to redefine the roles of road traffic officers in national security and road traffic safety in the 21st century. The World Health Organization, WHO report on road safety in the African region says more than 1 in 4 traffic accidents deaths in Africa occur on Nigerian roads, placing the country as having the 2nd worst traffic fatality in the world.
The incessant falling of fuel tankers in recent times was due mainly to lack of skill, knowledge, and I don't care attitude of truck drivers. This, of course, will not be detected at the point of obtaining driver's license, because majority of truck and trailer drivers do not go through VIO test. Because when you have the indication of function, it brings about confusion. This conference portrays the importance attached to safety of drivers, passengers, in installation. We must not allow Nigeria to be left behind in the United Nations millennium goal of achieving appreciable road traffic safety on our roads.
And finally, the Inspector General of Police has paid a visit to the NP headquarters here in Abuja. Of course, we didn't give details of that report, but later in a subsequent news there. Of course, that rounds up the morning news. It's back to Claire and concludes for the continuation of Good Morning Nigeria. Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much there, Rhoda, for the news package. And next for us now is our business segment. And economic experts are reacting to the proposal by the federal government to increase value-added tax from the current 5 to 10%. Plus, the Chinese yuan loses nearly 2% against the US dollar. Details of these and other stories with Shiu Ogunli.
It's another time to talk development in the world of business. My name is Shiu Ogunli. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, said it plans to increase the value-added tax from 5% to 10% and may soon start clamping down on restaurant companies. Acting chairman of the FIRS, Mr. Sunday Ogunleson, disclosed this during an interactive session with journalists in Lagos. He said the FIRS is consulting with relevant agencies on the need to up the VAT in view of the falling oil prices, which has adversely affected the economy. Ogunleson hinted that of about 450,000 corporate entities in the country, only about 125,000 pay taxes to government coffers. According to him, one of the greatest challenges facing the FIRS is that most companies that evade tax oftentimes cannot be traced. The FIRS boss said the agency's effort is to achieve set revenue targets, pointing out that it will help shore up the economy. Still on taxation, economic experts have been reacting to the proposed plan by the federal government to increase the value-added tax to 10% from the present 5%. Development economist Professor Ken Ife, during an exclusive interview with NTA Business News, said the move is in the right direction but cautioned the government to take it slow and steady. Professor Ife said the increase of value-added tax to 10% is due. The government should do it in a staged approach to avoid public reactions. Ife, during an exclusive Business News, said the move is in the right direction but cautioned the government to steady. Professor is a value-added tax to avoid public reactions. He, during an exclusive Business News, said the move is in the right direction but cautioned the government in a staged approach. The government should do it 10% is due and steady. Professor Ife said the increase to avoid public reaction of value-added tax to He, during an exclusive is in the right direction but cautioned the government should do it 10% is due in a staged approach and steady. Professor Ife said the away from taxation now to faraway Asia, where the People's Bank of China allowed the yuan to depreciate by nearly 2% against the US dollars on Tuesday, the result of a surprise policy change that roiled international currency markets. The central bank said it had decided to allow market forces greater control over the yuan and announced a major change in how the currency's daily fixed or midpoint will be calculated. The sudden devaluation is the largest in 2 decades and comes amid a period of slower economic growth and increased stock market volatility in China. The move announced before the market opened on Tuesday quickly rippled through global currency markets, sparking questions over Beijing's timing and intentions. Experts say the dramatic devaluation, even if it is a one-time event, is likely to draw intense criticism from some quarters. The U.S. has long accused China of keeping its currency artificially low by holding foreign reserves instead of allowing it to move freely in foreign exchange markets. In Asia, some are likely to see the move as a sign that China is weakening its currency intentionally, possibly in reaction to very weak export data released over the weekend. A weak currency cheapened the price of a country's exports, making them more attractive to international buyers by undercutting competitors. If other nations in the region also decide to devalue their currency in response, it could be leading to so-called competitive devaluation, also known as a currency war. China's central bank, however, stressed that the policy change is part of reforms designed to allow market forces to have more influence over the yuan. And that's the package on the business news for now. Thanks for watching.
Alright, Shiu Ogunli with the business news package for us. Coming up next is newspaper review.
thank you for being with us. It's time now for us to take a look at the headlines in today's newspapers. Unfortunately, newspaper reviewer Bayo Atoyebe is also not available with us today, but Clear we just proceed as we did yesterday with a review of the headlines. Now, a story that is common to most of the front pages that we have this morning has to do with the report on the forthcoming trial of alleged looters of the National Treasury. That's the lead story from Daily Trust. Daily Trust says, looters trial begins soon, Buhari says. And right after that says, follow due process, Abu Salami Committee tells President. And below the main flag, 9 top NNPC officials and 38 directors sacked. That's can be found in greater detail on page 3. And then, of course, below the photograph on the front page of Daily Trust, there are 3 other headlines. Of course, some crisis still in Borno. Female suicide bomber strikes, kills 48 in Borno. Details on page 4. And NCC, that's the Nigerian Communications Commission, struggle begins for 7 vacant positions. And Senate and Reps yet to debate bills 2 months on. That's an evaluation of the National Assembly 2 months since its inauguration. Details of that on page 3. Clear.
All right, Newswatch Times is what I'll be starting with, and it leads again with the story of fears as Buhari begins trial of treasury looters in weeks. And this story you can find, the details of course continues on page 2. And trending just below the picture story, Senate orders NERC, that's the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, to scrap estimated billing and fixed meter charges. Nigeria needs 15 billion naira for 8,000 megawatts power, and this is coming from TCN. Details of that is on page 4. And 50 killed in fresh bomb blast in Borno. Immigration blocks Nigerians' recruitment into ISIS. That's a story you can find on page 2. And domiciliary account is trending on the bottom there. Reps summon CBN governor over ban of foreign currency deposits. It's on page 4. And just above the masthead, federal government to save $5.3 million daily from Kaduna refinery. Of course, they're working at 90% of production. Rules out government part delegation. Simply.
Right, the next paper we'll be taking a look at will be The Nation. The Nation says above its name flag, dozens fear dead in Borno market explosions. And Autumn, that's the governor of Benue State, begins probe of Suswan's administration, and Ahmed orders institution to open single account. And flood destroys 418 homes and 70 million naira worth of properties in Bauchi. And also there on the front page of The Nation, new heads for NNPC firms and PPMC chief and others fired. Details on page 4. Now, below the main flag, we have 2 headlines. Security agencies watchlist Supreme Court justices. And cancer patients and others hard hit by CBN's forex policy. Now, mid-page, there's an inside story which is promoted on the front page there. ICPC orders Okio-led police commission to refund 145 million naira. This is to be found at page 56. Next story, of course, is just below the front page photograph, and it has to do again with the visit of the Abu Salami Peace Committee, National Council, to President Buhari yesterday. Abu Salami panel, that's the kicker. We didn't beg for Jonathan, and the writer says treasury looters to face trial soon, and that's according to President Buhari. Clear.
Okay, National Mirror is next. The National Mirror begins its lead story with trial of treasury looters begins soon. Trial of treasury looters begins soon. Buhari gives reason for a single treasury account, and General Abubakar urges federal government to be guided by rule of law. That's the lead story on the front page of the National Mirror. And coming below that, just at the bottom of the paper, Senate orders NERC to hold fixed electricity charges, and federal government to spend 15 billion naira to generate 8,000 megawatts by 2016. That's another story. Now, we are all guilty of electing Jonathan in 2007. This is coming from former President OBJ The story is on page 14. But just above the masses, more heads roll at NNPC, 38 fired, new GDs, MDs appointed, and customs boss in the Diko resign. That story is also on page 7. Now looking at the trending stories just on the left column there. NDLEA seizes 2.8 billion naira drugs at Lagos Airport in 6 months. The story is on page 7. And reps summon CBN governor over ban on dollar deposits. You can find the details of this story on page 4.
Alright, well, let's move on now to the Guardian newspaper. Of course, you remember, Claire, when we were reading the figures of the casualties of the Borno bomb incident yesterday. Some said 50, others said 48, but the fact that there were fatalities arising from that. The Guardian on its front page is reporting this morning that 32 persons were feared killed in fresh Borno market blast. That's somewhere on the right-hand side towards the bottom. But let's begin from the top of the paper, just above the main flag. Africa will be home to half of world's 11 billion population by 2100. That is year 2100. That's been attributed to a study by the United Nations. It has a rider. Nigerians to increase from 182 million to 752 million by 2100. That's we're looking at another 85 years from now. Claire, I wonder how many of us will be available around that. Okay, the Guardian also has a story. Treasury looters for trial soon, says Buhari, and National Peace Committee prescribes due process. That's the writer to that story. Now, the Guardian has some promotional copies on its window page, and it says, Health News, that's at page 61. Tomato stops wrinkles, prostate cancer, and boosts sperm quality. Researchers find. Details of that can be found on page 61 of the Guardian. That's the health section of the paper. Now, in greater detail on page 3 is the story headline, OAU restricts students' movement over Orni. OAU stands for Bafumi Awolowo University and is located at Ile-Ife. 22 feared killed in Fresh Borno market blast. I read that earlier. And just below the photograph on the front page there is the second lead story of the paper. NNPC shrinks top management staff from 122 to 83, and 2 riders get new GEDs, that's group executive directors and subsidiaries. Senate moves to amend NNPC Act. Senate moves to amend NNPC Act. Well, Claire, how does that square with the PIB? Anyway,
all right. Next paper is Blueprint Kingsley, and it leads with Buhari. Trials of corrupt persons begin soon, and this is a story Kingsley that is trending in all the papers. Indeed, it's a front-page report. But of course they have come in different captions, and that's why we're reading all of them out. But the Blueprint has a rider to that story. It says, upgrades Abdusalami's committee to National Peace Council. And yesterday, Kingsley on the TV station, we saw Bishop Kuka, trying to explain that it's not the Nigerians in averse to fighting corruption, but that of course in doing that, the rule of law, they must be guided by the rule of law.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, it's important that this decision we are in, once the accused persons have been arraigned, they are entitled, according to the Constitution, to be defended. Either they wish to defend themselves or they wish to get counsel to stand for them. Of course, and there are court procedures to follow in criminal trials.
Okay. Other stories on the front page of the Blueprint. Kanu uncovers 900 ghost workers. Directors fingered. Kanu uncovers 900 ghost workers. Directors fingered. You can find that on page 5. And Plateau debt total now 222.3 billion naira, and this is attributed to Transition Committee. Senate refers a Shomole's $75 million World Bank loan to committee. You can find details on page 5. And just talking below the masses, reps probe 5 billion naira police fund, stress need for more personnel. Police reps probe 5 billion naira police fund, stress need for more personnel. Just to draw your attention, today in history, August 12, 1938, this story is on page 4 of our first Blueprint. Hitler instituted the Mother's Cross, and it's of course done to encourage, according to this paper, German women to have more children, to be awarded each year on August 12th, Hitler's mother's birthday. That's today's news.
Well, I'm sure the Germans themselves also have a reaction to Adolf Hitler following what happened in the Holocaust and the Second World War that ended in 1945. Now, Vanguard newspaper is next for us. The front pages are similar to the other stories that we have read, so I'll go straight to the inside page. And there's a story that I would like Claire to pay attention to, page 8 of Vanguard newspaper. If you can have page 8 of Vanguard newspaper right there on the screen, not the front page now, page 8 of Vanguard. Buhari is born-again phenomenon, and this is attributed to Professor Wole Soyinka, and he says Nigerians should have challenged Jonathan for defending stealing. And Wole Soyinka insists Paris confraternity isn't a cult. That's one of the stories on page 8 of Vanguard newspaper. Also there, page 8 of Vanguard, Labour rejects plan 100% increase on VAT. We have that story in our business segment, and the writer says it will worsen poverty level. And crucially, Claire, also from page 8 of Vanguard, Ghana does not manage Nigeria's airspace. Ghana does not manage Nigeria's airspace. Now, let's paraphrase a couple of paragraphs from there. The Ghana Civil Aviation Authority has denied reports that Ghana manages the airspace of Nigeria over the Gulf of Guinea. Now, this has been attributed to the Deputy Director General of the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. Now, she said that the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, has sent a delegation to Nigeria to ascertain the truth concerning President Muhammadu Buhari's directive to Nigeria's Ministry of Aviation to take over the security of Nigeria's airspace over the Gulf of Guinea from Ghana. But rather, the report also indicates that what happens is that Ghana manages the airspace of Togo and Benin Republics. Well, this is it's a developing story. Last week, you recall, after the briefing of the officials of the Ministry of Aviation, there was a directive that Nigeria should henceforth manage its airspace over the Gulf of Guinea, and the indication was that Ghana has been so managing Nigeria's airspace in that part since 1945, which was a link with the end of Second World War. But Ghana is now saying, according to the Vanguard at page 8, that repeating the story that it does not manage Nigeria's airspace. So it's a story to watch, and of course we'll also have to watch out how the Ministry of Aviation responds to this, along with the spokespersons of Mr. President.
The New Telegraph is quite busy. The front page itself, of course, has a splash of stories here and there. I quickly take out the lead one. It's on trial of Treasury letters begins soon, again, says Buhari. And the writer to that story, Abdul Salami Committee, 6 fairness in war against graft. The story, the details of it is on page 2. And there you have a picture story of the President Christian Association of Nigeria, Pastor Ayo Risojapo, Archbishop of Abuja, John Cardinal Onaiko, Sultan of Sokoto, Elijah Abubakar II, and Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Bishop Hassan Kuka, all of course at a meeting of the National Peace Committee with President Muhammadu Buhari in, of course, Abuja. And of course, we heard that this has been elevated, the Peace Council elevated to National Peace Committee, yes, the Council. Now, tension in Ife over all news it's there at the bottom. Residents storm banks, markets, and OAU restricts student movement. That is on page 2. Now, other stories, I said the front page is quite busy. Senate scraps electricity fixed charges. It's on page 8. It's just the there. Secretary registers unemployed youth. It's on page 44. And termites, reptiles take over Benue Justice Ministry. Wow. This is on page 43. Now, NNPC fires 39 top managers. There are quite a number of those affected listed as riders there. And one of them, Buhari, approves 4 GEDs. That's, of course, group executive directors' appointments. Reps summon Emefiele over ban on forex deposits in banks. This is on page 12. That's all from New Telegraph.
Right, this day newspaper is next for us. That's the last article I have for review this morning, but I'm sure you have another paper. The front page stories are similar similar to some of the other stories we read. Lead story says, for instance, Buhari, trial of looters of public funds imminent. and Abdul Salami orders adhere to the rule of law. And Peace Committee says Jonathan did not seek its intervention. That's the writer to that late story. NNPC shake-up cuts top management from 122 to 83, and also says another writer there, OPEC, cheap oil taking longer to subdue shale suppliers. Now another different figure from the Borno incident yesterday, apparently by Boko Haram. 20 killed in Borno market bomb attack. Other papers clear, remember, Guardian saying 38, other saying 48, another one saying 50, but there were fatalities regardless. Now, above that headline, and that's also above its name flag, in major reform, federal government begins implementation of TSA. That's a major topic for our conversation this morning, and we're having a number of guests to take that. Well, let me just go to the inside pages. Again, that's another running copy. Page 8 of this day. House to summon Emefiele, that's CBN governor, over restrictions on the ministerial accounts. And also to quiz DPR over tank farm licensing. And that's from page 8 of this day newspaper. And then page 10, of course, there are other stories, pages 10 and 11 from this day. Claire?
Okay. Finally, Daily Sun, and it captures its own lead story this week. Judgment day for looters. They will be prosecuted soon, Buhari, 25. And the picture story of members of the National Peace Committee meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo in Abuja yesterday. Abdul Salami Peace Committee clears Jonathan. You can find this on page 6. The didn't call us to complain about President. Now, 48 killed in Borno, again, Kingsley disparity in figures. Gunmen murder ex-lawmaker and 2 others injured. These stories are on pages 5 and 14. And FIFA presidency, why we support Kalu by Fashano, is on page 55. Now, Kingsley, are we likely to see, for the first time in history, a black African, as leader of that soccer world body?
We wish Kalu all the very best of luck in seeking to contest the presidency of FIFA. But of course, we all know the politics of FIFA and how tough it certainly can be for us. But it doesn't hurt to give it a try.
It is on merit. Fashano and those who are urging Kalu to go on race, they know his pedigree, they know his antecedents, they know what Kalu can do. And since he's getting the support of the football
yeah, that's right. So that's why we argue about. That's the point that you recall was saying that the NNPC Act is to be reviewed by the Senate. And then we ask the question, where does that leave the PID? Alright, that's the most we can take on this review segment this morning. As I said, Bayo Atebe was unavoidably absent today. Okay, take a break now, and when we return, it will be time for us to go into our principal topic for conversation, namely the TSA. That's the Treasury Single Account. What impact it will have on stakeholders as well as the public accounting system.
Dettol 175 grams family soap. Buy Dettol family soap for 200 naira and save 50 naira.
Would you like some water? It's cold, especially for you.
Where are you living in? We have a fridge.
When everything else in your house is from the present, then why are your toilet cleaning methods from the past? Harpic all-in-one for you. Compared to other toilet cleaners, Harpic removes top stains, kills all germs, and removes bad odors. For a shining clean and fresh toilet.
Wow.
You should also take the Harpic
all-in-one tablet.
Alright, thank you for joining us. Let's begin our conversation now. The building blocks, to use Kingsley's words, to the new directives of all federal ministries, departments and agencies start paying into a single treasury account for all government revenues, incomes and other receipts started in 2012 as a pilot scheme. Now that exercise involved over 200 ministries, departments and agencies, and it was reported to have saved the country huge sums of money running into billions of naira. Now, as a background to our conversation this morning, correspondent Salihu Abdullahi takes a look at the significance of the new policy for the nation's economic stability and growth.
No doubt, Buhari administration is on board at a time of drivers say so much needs to be done to return the country's lost glory. The administration has continued to unfold strategies in pursuance of its commitment to stamp out corruption. One of such is the introduction of the Treasury Single Account, TSA. It is a bank account or a set of linked bank accounts through which the government transacts all its receipts and payments and get a consolidated view of its cash position at any given time. The directive was part of measures specifically designed to promote transparency and facilitate compliance with Section 80 and 162 of the 1999 Constitution. First to be affected in this development includes Central Bank of Nigeria, Security and Exchange Commission, Corporate Affairs Commission, Nigerian Ports Authority, National Communications Commission, Federal Aviation Authority, and Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. Others are Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency (NIMASA), Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, Nigerian Shippers Council, Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Department of Petroleum Resources, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Nigerian Customs Service, and Ministry of Mines and Steel Development. Financial experts believe the Treasury Single Account will enable government know its financial bills at every point in time.
So the government is desirous of putting an end to that so that we have a centralized system. The expenditure side started actually in 2012, and what is being done now is the receipt and the revenue side to ensure that everything is harmonized and it works smoothly. It's not new. So many other countries have done it, including many advanced countries and also some developing countries, and the benefits are many.
So basically for us, it is about having this fund in the central bank, so that we are when managing the cash resources of government. It is actually in a central port. We will know the financial position of government at any point.
Let us know the situation of government finances now with oil prices crashing. In my opinion, this is just the best thing the government has to do, at this moment in order to improve its cash position.
Development economist Professor Ken Ife also made comment on the development and its possible effect on the nation's economy.
We are borrowing heavily to pay wages and all sorts of borrowing. But that borrowing pressure will be reduced when you know what is the state of your account, where you have money, what money you have. This is the propensity to borrow.
Experts believe that the development will promote transparency and facilitate financial growth, as it is in line with the provision of the 1999 Constitution.
Thank you very much there for that background report. Claire, as we said, the building blocks for this began some years ago, and now we are seeing building blocks, of course, led to what was then known, what is still known today as the e-payment system. Now what we're getting into is now the e-collection system. That's the way to easily describe the TSA. And yesterday, of course, the head of service of the Federation issued a circular which said that the policy on TSA took effect from yesterday. Yesterday being the 11th day of August, 2015. But we have a number of guests across, of course, MDAs, wherever you are, federal ministries, departments, and agencies. We expect that state governments will also take a cue from this. I read one account that I think Kuala State, has.
Kaduna State as well.
Yeah, we expect states to key into this, because that's the way to go. Obviously, as we'll hear from a number of our guests. I don't want to preempt them, but as we said, we have a number of guests to discuss this matter with us this morning. First, let's welcome one of our fairly regular analysts on this program, Dr. Obadiah Melafia. Is a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Dr. Melafia, welcome as usual to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
I think from our Lagos Network Center, we have two gentlemen. They're right there on the screen. We have Ambassador Godfrey Chojule. He is a financial consultant. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Nigeria.
There in Lagos, seated next to Ambassador Chojili is Christian, aka Christian is a chartered accountant and also chairman Audit Committee Institute. Mr. Figo, thank you very much for joining us.
I appreciate you having me here today.
And we will be joined from far away Scotland via telephone, another former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Mr. Tunde Lemo. Mr. Tunde Lemo, it's good to have you join us on the program this morning.
I think our engineers are trying to establish the audio links there because we're reaching Mr. Tunde Lemo, also a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank via telephone. If we have him, Mr. Lemo, if you can hear us, my colleague clearly I introduced you. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Can you hear me now?
Hello, good morning.
All right, we understand, yes. Mr. Lemo, thank you for joining us from where you are in Scotland. Of course, the views all over the place now is the introduction of the Treasury Single Account. The head of service of the Federation issued a circular yesterday saying that the policy took effect, of course, from yesterday. Now, you were in the system, and the directive says that all MDAs should have an account with the Central Bank of Nigeria. Can you give us a bit background to this policy and what makes it so essential at this time?
Well, the implementation of this policy, in my view, is about 3 years too late. It was established in 2012, and at that time, over 700 MDAs migrated, and we had outstanding a little over 100 MDAs. But these are the big boys: the military, the judiciary, National Assembly, foreign embassies, and the paramilitary. The program will have assisted a great deal in curbing inflation and in helping government to manage treasury so that they do not leave central bank, they do not leave their funds in central bank and yet go back to central bank to borrow such funds. But it's never too late. It's heartwarming now that Mr. President has directed that all of them should migrate, and this will help a great deal to curb corruption and also help seamless government payments.
All right, Mr. Lemo, let me start from what is of concern or would be of concern to many people. If the 1999 Constitution, Sections 80 and 162, stipulated that all federal government money be remitted to a single account, the question will be, why the fragmented account in the first place?
Well, you recall that in the prior to now, government accounts were not automated, and when you look at MDAs generally, you have to classify them into three: those who are fully funded, those who are partially funded, and those who are self-funded. And given the nature of MDAs generally, it wasn't possible to have single accounts in the first instance. But now with the help of connectivity, now with the help of IT, all of that can happen in one single account with the Office of Accountant General superintending over the entire fund flow.
Well, Mr. Lemo, thank you very much. For the benefit of our viewers, because we know persons who are not schooled in public accounting system, could you just explain very briefly what it means to be fully funded, partially funded, and then self-funded?
Well, you have an MDA that depends on government budget and appropriation. That is a fully funded MDA. Most of the government ministries and departments are in that category. But you also have others that are partially funded. Yes, they earn their revenue, but they also augment from government disbursements from the federation account or from the consolidated revenue fund. But those who are self-funding, like FIRS, Federal Inland Revenue Service, like the Customs or Department of Petroleum Resources, these are the ones that generate their revenue by themselves, and so the accounting for all these differs from one MDA to the other.
And then an additional point to ask is to clarify. This policy had its gestation, in 2012 as a pilot scheme. And as you very well explained, not all MDAs migrated to the TSA system. But we had the we had the e-payment system by which the central bank took control of what was going on. From your experience at that time, did that in any way act as a brake, as it were, on reckless withdrawals from the public team?
Well, when you talk about e-payments, I mean, maybe what you meant was e-collection. In other words, government revenue is collected electronically and washes into central bank funds. And this has been very, very successful. The e-collection element of the TSA started around April this year, and central bank has assisted a great deal in reining in government funding and is prevented diversion in any form or leakage.
Right, Mr. Lemo, thank you for your response. We're still keeping you on hold and back to, of course, another former deputy governor of the central bank, Dr. Obadiah Milapia. It's quite a revelation, many people say, that this is, something that the Constitution, has stipulated, and government itself is, has not complied with it for quite a long time. I don't know. Do you buy the response of Mr. Lemo?
Well, let me also say good morning to my brother Tunde Ekujameta. I hope you will take time and play golf in Scotland. There are very good golf courses there. Well, I think he is very right. Our constitution is very clear. Section 80 and Section 162 clearly specify that there shall be a unified revenue account for the federation. And the fact that we have not been able to implement it is a factor of so many things. The logistics of it and also the technology aspects of it. It was not too long that we had a unified payment system for the banks after the reforms and so on. So these things take a bit of time, and as you know, lots of things in our constitution are aspirational. You do it and implement it at such a time as you are ready for it, and we think that this is now the time for it. The pilot project started as far back as 2012, but my concern, in principle I'm very agreeable to it because the advantages are several. It will reduce hemorrhage and leakages in the system. It will enhance the capacity of the Treasury, that is the Ministry of Finance, to monitor not only revenue collection but also revenue disbursements. And the electronic automated system will make things better. Revenues can be collected quickly, there can be monitoring, you can even plan and forecast, and it will reduce the cost of government borrowing. There are all sorts of accounts that sometimes even the same ministry has forgotten about, and they'll go and borrow just to implement projects, whereas the monies are in those accounts somewhere. So with pulling all resources together, everybody knows that there is so much in the government kitty, and it can also enhance fungibility. My main concern is that, these kind of things, you have to plan them carefully. I am not aware that most MDAs understand the whole thing. There should have been more orientation, more seminars, more induction, and so on and so forth. All these ones would have helped. More training.
But sorry, Mr. Lemo said over 700, if I got it correct, MBAs at the time.
200,
okay, migrated, and just about the big ones, left. So what reasons might the big ones have, not to have migrated as well?
Well, it's not maybe, I wouldn't speculate, but to be honest with you, I would have started with the big ones. They are the ones who are supposed to be there first. When you go fishing, you better, if you're concentrating on small fish, what's the point? Go for the big fish. The NNPCs of this world, NCC, the Ports Authority, exactly, and the Customs Service, all those ones, rope them into the system, and then you worry about the small fish later on, because it is to everybody's advantage that we have this unified system. And of course, I suspect that there are other reasons, less noble reasons, why some people may be reluctant to go in.
All right, Dr. Thank you very much. One of the key points that you have raised this morning is that there ought to be some prior sensitization of the MDAs, particularly the DFAs, that's the Directors of Finance and Accounts. That is responsibility, of course, of the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. I'm sure that these are matters that we hope that they will bring to bear. But let's go over to our Lagos Network Center, where earlier we introduced Ambassador Godsile Chejile, who is a financial consultant. Ambassador Chejile, look, the accounts are now to be warehoused, as it were, with the central bank, and the multiplicity of accounts running to several thousands will obviously have to be closed. These banks are, the accounts are domiciled in various commercial banks. This is going to have some implication. The run on the banks, balance sheet defects, and so on and so forth. What's your take, and how can we begin to mitigate the consequences?
Very much. I think certainly it will impact on liquidity in the commercial bank and the ability to lend funds to end users. That's as it affects the liquidity of the bank, but we need to go a little beyond the liquidity of the bank. The essence of this program is to improve transparency of government payments and income capturing process. It's part of the anti-corruption war. So for now, the focus should be how effectively can we use this to fight corruption. Yes, in terms of rising that's interest rate in the banking sector, certainly that will pitch up, but not substantially, because for quite some time we've had the bulk of deposits from government and government-related agencies with central banks. But if I pull a little back to look at how this started, like Mr. Tunde Lemo said, over 3 years ago, and where we are, we've implemented the expenditure aspect of it, and we are now looking at how we bring in the income expenditure aspect of it. This was to kick off by February this year, but it didn't. But we are happy the big boys are coming in. I think they are the last leg of the process to come in. It will help improve revenue collection, which we have seen in these last 2 months of the new administration. We've seen state government revenue or allocation from the federation account go up as much as 15-20% in the last 2 months. So we're likely going to see more of that as we embark on this process. The former central bank deputy governor said, we need to work on the issue of capacity building. I'm happy the head of service is on top of this. He's a renowned accountant and a lawyer. I think he will be able to track some of these process to see how effective the policy and the implementation or the enforcement of the policy with the MDAs. If we start with the first phase, which captured the expenditure end of it, enabling government to track every payment in the system, let's ask ourselves, how much have we done on that side of the transaction? Have we seen 100% compliance? Are MDAs still paying from their commercial bank account? If they are still doing that, that means we are still likely going to have that kind of receipt on this end. So they need to put in a sanction that will be effective to check abuse of the system.
A break at which point it's slightly gone past 8 o'clock. We want to return to the newsroom to join Rhoda Obo to give us, of course, news on top of the hour.
Right, thank you, Claire. It is now authoritative that the prosecution of presidency has stolen national resources will begin in a matter of weeks. President Muhammadu Buhari, who announced this after meeting with members of the National Peace Committee, said his administration is irrevocably committed to doing everything within its powers to break the vicious circle of corruption, joblessness, and insecurity.
We are committed to ensuring that the gains and the blessings God has given us come to fruition. People need to be encouraged. And we need to reaffirm, that this is our country. The only thing we can all collectively be opposed to is injustice, iniquity, corruption. And in that regard, we all have one single conversation.
Now, former Nigerian permanent representative to the United Nations, Yusuf Maitama-Sule, has called on Nigerians to use the present administration the needed support in the efforts to bring about peace, security, and corruption-free society. Speaking to State House correspondents after a visit to the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, the elder statement says the country has over time had to battle with real problems of bad image abroad and insecurity. Nigeria, he says, needs the kind of good leadership as being displayed presently by President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo to address those issues. He described the administration as a new era which will produce positive change. The international community, he stresses, is already giving support and showing great understanding.
Tell them if they do wrong or if they go wrong. Support them if they do the right thing, but do it in a responsible, constructive manner. That we shall do. For we have confidence in them. We don't want them to fail, and by the grace of God, they will not fail.
The Inspector General of Police, Solomon Arase, has called on Nigerians to support the police in maintaining security in their communities. The Inspector General of Police made the appeal when he met with NTA's management at the NTA headquarters in Abuja.
Dispute over land. Why do you have to bug the police with that? It is not strictly a criminal thing. And unity. Those issues, we've got to bring them to the doorstep of everybody. Let Nigerians participate in all of these conversations so that the totality of our views shape policy formulation and implementation at the end of the day.
And that does it. It's back to Claire Kingsley for the continuation of Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, Rhoda, thank you for the news, and we continue with our conversation. If you've just joined us, we're looking at the TSA, that's the directive, of course, that all government monies be remitted into a single treasury account. And we have a gentleman right here in the studio, two former deputy governors of the central bank. Of course, we have a financial consultant and a chartered accountant. And I will be speaking to you next, Mr. Ekigwe in Lagos. Yes, this directive, the TSA, will block leakages, stop hemorrhage, stop diversion of funds, help, of course, in accountability, invariably or ultimately, fasten or quicken the pace of development. But the concern, the immediate concern to many will be just about what happens to the asset base of commercial banks.
Yes, Claire, you really captured the problem I have. I think in this debate, I am a bit of a contrarian, but I will tell you a contrarian for good reason and a courageous one at that. And you will know in a moment as I go across this. The way this has been framed is as if the TSA is a do-it-all solution. Well, the first risk you have with that in governance and control is that when you create such a situation and get people to become overconfident about it, then chances are that things are going to go wrong. The TSA itself, in concept and everything, is not governance, it's not control all by itself. At the end of the day, all those things will happen in the minds of people. I've had people say it will help to curb corruption. If you allow me, this is Nigeria, so I can speak my language. I'll give you a proverb in my language and translate as much as possible. I understand a little Hausa, but I'll start with Igbo. In Igbo language, we have this saying from where I come from that says, let me translate. What that means is that if an evil spirit is after you, you run into a room and shut the door. It doesn't save you from evil spirits. The spirit can get in there and get hold of you. So, if everyone is running to TSA saying it's going to solve the problem, I think that is oversimplification. So, arguably, there is a problem with having multiple accounts because when you do that, you have multiple points of failure. On the other hand, again, when you centralize, one of the first problems that I foresee is the central bank is going to become a commercial bank. Now the question is there anything in the history of the central bank that prepared its capacity for dealing with retail transactions at the volume at which that they are going to be doing it? Immediately you now think of the risks that are associated with sudden change. Are they prepared right now with change controls that will ensure that they train their people to do retail banking, that they also train them to know the peculiar kinds of risks that come with retail banking, which commercial banks over the years have been experienced to deal with. Right now, if you take the money away from commercial banks and expose them to a different kind of risk, what problem have we solved? Definitely the government has a right, both under the Constitution and in any case, anyhow you look at it, they have a right to put their money in one place. But I believe that leaving the money in the commercial banks will also be helpful. But one thing I will advise is government should conduct forensic audit of all banks and then identify those banks whose loan portfolio, particularly the bad loans, have connections of insiders. That is the problem we have with private banks. People set up private banks, collect government money, then declare bankruptcy, go away, and nothing happens. Any bank that has bad loans that are connected with executives or their relatives should not qualify to hold government money. If you do that, I believe that the banking sector can handle it. The impression we are getting here, which is totally wrong, is that everyone is doing it, and because the United States is doing it, Europe is doing it, Nigeria should do it. Give me a break. What is best practice is local. Nothing says that what works as best practice in the United States will work as best practice in Nigeria. Best practice is local. Like people said, every politics is local. We may have reasons to leave this money in the hands of commercial banks in Nigeria as a way of propping up our economy. Our economic models necessarily shouldn't be the same as the ones we have in New York. And I get angry when the Chicago boys or the Harvard boys or the Cambridge boys formulate economic policies, forgetting that these economic policies they formulated are based on economies that are information driven. They now want to graft it to a country like Nigeria where we don't have the same set of circumstances. I think that is one of the reasons why things go wrong here. There is nothing wrong in saying we will have TSA, but agencies can still leave their money. At the end of the day, we put a control system that will ensure that they can account on daily basis what balance is there and report to the TSA account at the central bank.
Sorry, we just interjected in Mr. Ekegwe's remarks. Mr. Ekegwe, we'll get back to you. But gentlemen, and all those who are watching, that's a point that I would like to put on the table, and it's my slight concern about the interpretation that has been given to the constitutional provision. Now, this includes, of course, Mr. Lemo, who is speaking to us from Scotland. Gentlemen, the Constitution provides for the establishment of a consolidated revenue fund. The Constitution doesn't say that it should have a consolidated revenue account. A fund can be fed through various accounts. And therefore, how do we deal with some of the concerns that Mr. Ekegwe and other speakers, other guests have raised in the course of this program? So my question goes therefore to Mr. Lemo, former Central Bank Deputy Governor. Mr. Lemo, one point to note, is the Central Bank ready for its function, as it were, as a retail banker? Now, if when the TSA becomes operational, as it was given effect yesterday, will MBAs be required to close their accounts with commercial banks? And next point, contractors and consultants that are paid by MBAs, will they now have to go to the central bank for their payments? How do we deal with all of this, Mr. Lemon?
Well, central bank has the capability to run TSA. Like I told you, this is a program that started in 2012. The gentleman who was talking about the possibility of failure, they should leave that for Central Bank. Central Bank is also a regulator. They will look at commercial banks and how they are faring using macro-prudential framework and other things that they use to supervise banks. But talking about the constitutional provision, let us not mix federation account with consolidated revenue fund. Consolidated revenue fund is federal government fund, and TSA is a means by which, of course, we can be smart with the movement of government funds. Let me even tell you, Kaduna State is starting their own at state level in September 1. If it is not good, Governor El-Rufai will not start it. And I think other states should follow suit, so that all of us can be very, very prudential in the way we manage funds. All revenue has fallen, and we need to be smarter with government funding.
So, Mr. Lemon, let's clarify this. Yes, there's a difference between the federation account, of course, which deals with all the tiers of government, and the consolidated revenue fund. States also have their own CRV, that's consolidated revenue fund. The point I was raising with regard to the consumer provision is this. It stipulates consolidated revenue fund and not consolidated revenue account. And I was saying, just splitting hairs if you wish, that a fund may be fed by different accounts.
You are right. You are very, very right. It can be fed by different accounts, but it can also be fed by one single account. It depends on the choice of the owner. And the owner, the federal government, is now saying, I want to centralize my account.
Well, let's quickly introduce our guest who just walked in while in the course of our conversation. Mr. Odilin Nwabara is an economist. He's one of our regular faces on this program. Mr. Nwabara, thank you for joining us. We'll get your perspective to this discussion, to this whole issue of TSA, and please take along with it. Mr. Ekize in Lagos, made an observation that if one is running away from a state and runs into an enclosure, he hasn't actually, gotten away from that spirit. Now, if we're trying to block corruption, which of course itself is, likened to a spirit, and we're using the TSA, might we not also be creating another room for funds, withholding of funds that we should be remitting?
Is that the question to me? I think let's make something clear here, because I want to make something clear. This is the problem. The problem is that by 2012, between 2012 and 2009 and 2012, it was discovered that revenue generating agencies, departments, and ministries withheld only up to withheld 9.4 trillion naira. That's the money that belongs to federal government. Belongs to federal government and the other the states. So what happens here is that because so many of these agencies have multiple accounts, that some of these accounts are with commercial banks, and some of these accounts have been placed to fixed deposit accounts, with high interest yielding, 15%, depending. And as a result, they do not remit this money to federal government. And when they do not remit this money to federal government goes to borrow the same money at a high interest rate. So, as a result of this, it is the law came that the treasury single account is needed so that all the agencies, departments, and ministries that are revenue generating put their money in that account. That will make it difficult for them to now put the money in commercial banks and be able to have interest. Then there is a lacuna. The problem is that these big boys, as they are called, we are getting away with that for one obvious reason. Section 22 subsection 1 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007 said all the ministries, departments, and agencies of government that are revenue generating can withhold 20% of their operating surplus and remit 80% to the federation account. So these agencies, departments, and ministries will be able to discover that they can move their operating cost to close to 100%. In fact, NNPC move this operating cost to 140%. So that we went to federal government and said, look, we need more money now for us to generate less money we're generating. So it was obvious that to block this, which I was asking for years, the government must repeal that section which says 20% must be retained of the operating surplus. 80% must be remitted. 80%. So they're saying operating surplus. So they determine the operating cost to be so high that surplus becomes close to nothing. So this is what is happening. And now when they keep this money with commercial banks, what the commercial banks do? They go about to lend the same money to government, or they use the money to engage in speculation, in financial speculation. Now it has created economic financialization in Nigeria. What is economic financialization? It is when there's high liquidity in the financial and banking sector, and that the real sector is limited. Because the interest rate is so high that the real sector cannot borrow. The only one that can borrow is government, because government is not a profit maximizer. So that was why the bankers committee always meet with the CBN and say, let's move interest rates high. So that the interest rates they are moving high is not interest rates CRR high, sorry. The cash reserve ratio they are moving is not the cash reserve ratio that will encourage they will discourage depositing federal money with the bank. But the cash reserve ratio they are asking to be raised is private depositors who you are supposed to lower their cash reserve ratio so that you encourage them to deposit money there. So these are the complexities that made it possible that government must rely these accounts so that it's able to monitor the account. It will also be able to know how much it has at a particular point in time and know how to effectively.
Claire, I just want to let's take it from here.
And I'm asking from a layman's perspective. I would like to know, Dr. Badaya, what happens if, for instance, MDA says, well, if you say I should do this, all right, I won't do that. I will hold what I've made. Maybe remit in part and keep the rest. Are we not creating another room for another, avenue for corruption?
Well, I think the directive is very clear, and it is a presidential directive, and if it's an MDA that is disobeying a presidential directive, then it means they don't like their job, and it's very clear. A directive is a directive. They have no choice but to implement it. This is very straightforward. The details about how much can be withheld, is something that is possible that they can discuss, on a case-by-case basis. And for some organizations, the technical maintenance needs are much higher than those of others. So I would imagine either they have a uniform standard of 20%, or it will vary from organization to organization. But let me correct two impressions or misimpressions. The first one is that it will affect the banks so badly, and I've read because the banks are going to go bust because all the money, government money, is being taken away from them. If there's a bank that goes into real difficulty because of that, then obviously something is wrong with that bank ab initio. Let's not forget the cash reserve ratio for government deposits was revised upwards to 75%, which means in fact we have only 25% to play with, isn't it? Government money must not be touched. That is really basically what it is. It's much lower of course for the private sector deposits. So and according to some calculations, the banks will lose only about 60 billion, which for all the banks put together is not a huge amount of money.
Some estimates are saying 600 actually.
Well,
I've
read 660 billion.
600 billion that might be withdrawn from the commercial banks.
Some estimates are saying. If it is 600 billion, it is a high amount of bank. A high amount. I care for the banks. I want them to succeed, and a lot of them are doing quite well, reasonably well. They are more robust than ever. But God help us if we are going to run our country for the benefit of banks. You can't do that. that should be made very clear. And it will offer an opportunity for banks to also source more actively for other forms of deposit. Because a banking system that will over-relies on government deposits is not in a very healthy position. So let's get that very clear. The second misimpression that we need to correct is that therefore, because of this policy, the central bank has become a commercial bank, a retail banker. Now, this is very wrong. It is totally untrue. The CBN Act states very expressly that one of the objectives of the CBN is that it is a banker to government. It does not say commercial banks are bankers to government. And I have some good international experience. In France, the price of conseil is directly controlled by the French, controls government funding. The Bank of England is the banker to the government. There is hardly any government money that is in commercial banks. It is all housed in the Bank of England. That is very clear. So, in fact, this policy is reaffirming the statutory role of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Let's get that very clear. So, it is totally wrong to make that suggestion. My worry is that the institutional architecture probably has not been thought through very well. How CBN is going to play, because it's going to be an expanded treasury role for the CBN. And also in most jurisdictions where we've gone there, and I've looked at cases, Nepal, Rwanda did it successfully, Uganda, Philippines, various countries have done it very successfully, New Zealand and so on. There are various approaches. It's not one uniform system. Sometimes you will leave small accounts in commercial banks for particular purposes. My only other worry is that we have not thought through very carefully about the institutional architecture. And if you look at the Ministry of Finance, we really don't have a strong treasury in the way the British people will talk about their treasury. Do you know how many economists work at the British treasury? Over 300. And they are the brightest, among the brightest kids you will ever find anywhere in Britain. It's a serious business. Also, Japan. The treasury in Japan is made up of some of the brightest people. They are very rigorous, they are very meticulous. They are studying all the cash, all the financial system, the inflows, the outflows, and this is linked to to the unified account that is housed in the central bank. I don't think we have thought through this very well, and I don't even think that we have a strong treasury the way it operates in all civilized countries. So that is really my worry.
Okay, well, Dr. Melapia, thank you very much there for your contribution. Let's go back again to our Lagos Network Center, Ambassador Godsile Chegile, as well as Mr. Christian Ekegwe. They're both seated there, what Ambassador Chegile is in suit. Ambassador Chegile, and this question actually, both of you should listen to this and respond. Mr. Ebara has raised an important point about what happened in the past, and we have also seen it indicated in the implementation of the new policy directive for the opening of the TSAs, that NDAs can't keep are supposed to remit actually their surplus, a certain percentage of their surplus. Everybody was saying 20%, but the new directive says 25% of that. If I may just read this. Now, the head of service said that NDAs not funded through the federal budget but are expected to pay an operating surplus or 25% of gross earnings to the CRO, that is the Consumer Revenue Fund, such as the CBN, SEC, and all that. And everybody raises a point. If an MDA decides to ramp up its operating costs, then of course the surplus diminishes, and what is payable to the TSA also diminishes. How then do you achieve the objective of seeking to plug the loopholes and so on and so forth? So the devil is in the details, as the saying goes. What's your response to that?
Thank you very much. The first issue is to look at how the federal government or how presidency came to this conclusion that we needed the TSA. The essence of this is to improve revenue. Let's look at the percentage of our revenue to GDP compared to other countries like Egypt or South Africa or Kenya. We are far below 17%. So all focus on TSA is to see how do we improve this basket of funds that will be available for the 3 tiers of government to share. Then you come back to the issue of what comes to the MDA from the surplus. Who determines what they are generating? Who determines the cost? Will somebody ramp up the cost against revenue so that what he has left to remit to TSA is so minimal? I think there comes the issue of the Auditor General and the Accountant General's office to look at some of the issues, some of the expenditures, and be able to go through a proper budgetary process. Do we bring everybody to say, look, let's go through the process of budgeting for your expenses and looking at your income. So at the end of the day, the differential is what comes into the basket. In that process, we can look at every detail of their expenditure. So in that case, we are not in total control of what they constitute as the total cost of collecting the revenue. But rather, we should go back and let's look at what are the details, what constitutes the cost of collecting this revenue, and be able to budget properly for that and take into account the revenue so that we can have a total picture of what the guy is generating and what he's spending, so that he doesn't ramp up the expense for collecting the revenue, and at the end of the day we get nothing. We'll come back to square one. So what the point I'm making here is that the main reason for this is to see how we improve revenue as a percentage of GDP. We are currently below 16%. In other countries in Africa, you're talking 37, some as far as 42%. So how do we improve this? So the TSA should not make us go below where we are. So it not only stops at looking at what they are remitting to the TSA, we have to go back and look at the cost of collection of the revenue too. So I think this is very, very important so that we don't end up with a position that is worse than what we were before the takeoff of the TSA.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ekegwe, where you see the evil spirit is back again, introduced by Mr. Emma. How do you respond to this? The evil spirit about that. I said he talked about, Mr. Ekegwe talked about the evil spirit, and then it was reintroduced by Mr. Emma. So the evil spirit is still there. So how do you deal now with the devil in the details?
Just like Paul said, that enclosure doesn't save you from that spirit. That enclosure of TSA doesn't save you from that, from that spirit. So one of the things that we need to do is tell ourselves the truth that, I remember my days in auditing, auditing. One of the things we found out is that a business process owner who is sufficiently motivated can deceive any auditor anywhere. I've had guys in here say that the Auditor General has to audit. If the business process owner is sufficiently motivated, the Auditor General will see nothing. He will see nothing. So I believe that we have to do what is fair. The gentleman in Bio, I've forgotten what he said, has tried to assert that TSA has to be done, number one, because the Constitution says it, and then again, because it's the best practice of what to do. That's my way of saying what he said. I might be wrong. But I try to argue that we need to relate these practices, we need to relate them to our development index. I know in economic history that United States and Britain, at some point, we are using private bankers. If we equate Nigeria's development to where they were then, we should actually be using private bankers. There were the JP Morgan, there were the Rothschilds, alright? Now, if we now try to do what they are doing, you have already said that those are civilized societies. And my question is Nigeria sufficiently civilized to practice that? The answer is no. So there's a concept in control we call necessary non-standard. You know that this is not the standard, but because of the peculiarities of your underdevelopment, you practice it because that's what you need to take your people to the next level. For example, affirmative action, national character is not best practice because that may eliminate somebody who is the best. But national character actually unifies and upbuilds the community. So you do it, not that it is the right standard, but it's a necessary non-standard. So what we are saying here is that Britain is doing something is good for them. TSA is the standard, but there's a necessary non-standard that says Nigeria should not practice it completely so. Because when you do that, you weaken the economy. In economic development theory, we have learned that the finance sector is the locomotive of the economy. Anything you do, any policy you do without strengthening them, the entire economy will eventually collapse. So at the end of the day, who is the government for? If the people suffer as a result of the economy collapsing. There's a price for everything we do. We shouldn't let that price to be too high. Somehow we pay it, which even includes bad debts, which will now socialize for the taxpayers to bear. Those things should be kept at normal level. So there will be normal cost. What kills an economy is abnormal cost. If the cost of development becomes abnormal, then we have a problem. So I believe that exiting all those funds from the private sector banking will actually hurt the economy. No development economist will stand up on his intellectual authority and tell you that this is what should be done for a country like Nigeria in 2016. And that is my argument that we shouldn't do it completely.
All right, Mr. Ike, there is a small evil spirit flying around here that I've got to do with. I've got to do it, excuse me. But let's get to Mr. Nebo in Scotland. We understand that this directive also states that for agencies that are fully or partially self-funding, a kind of account will have to be, maintained at the CBN, and of course an accounting system that they can access will also configured, but this will have to be based on the, they will have to access funds that are approved based on their budgetary position. Some see this as basically contradictory. Explain that to us.
It's not contradictory at all. Indeed, the customs already does that. The custom is not funded by government, and yet is expected to be on TSA, and indeed the central bank has even been collecting their revenue for them. It helps accountability. In other words, TSA does not shut down any other activity of a partially funded MDA. It gives visibility on the flow of funds in and out of such institutions. So an arrangement can be worked out whereby all the revenue washes into the TSA account, and yet there is a means by which, of course, we recognize the need for them to service some interest and take care of some funding, and all of that can be worked out. I was just intrigued by what the last speaker said about the doomsday theory. I endorse completely what Dr. Badar Milafi has said. Government money should remain in government banks, and the commercial banks should devise other means by which they raise their deposit level. Any bank that solely depends on government deposits to survive is to take another look, and they are big and robust now, which was why we came up with the consolidation in the first instance in 2005.
Thank you very much there for your reaction to my colleague's question. But one point that I think we should also deal with has to do with what happens in government business and government administration. The policy directive now on TSA is not absolute. There's a proviso that an account may otherwise be operated under the TSA, but that account to be operated has to be with the express written approval. They come from the president or some other designated authority. Now, Mr. Lebo, you're familiar with the way government works. Any of the agencies, including the big boys, or the big agencies, could go with their own files and then they say, oh, because of our operating exigencies, we don't want to be tied to the bureaucracy of the CBA, TSA, and so on and so forth. Can we get this approval? And they convince the approving authority, say that Mr. President, and Mr. President approves. They talk it in the armpit and they go away. Another agency comes, and before you know it, one, it becomes two, it becomes three, it becomes four, and then you lose the big boys. How can we mitigate this potential abuse of the proviso through the TSA policy?
I'm not sure the president, who is very serious about accountability, will be speaking from both sides of the mouth. Indeed, we understand a few of them that have to run that way. It's not going to be one size fits all. It's not going to be an opportunity or irresponsibility. And then the people who will give approval at the level of government are also knowledgeable enough. Don't forget, we're going to have experts in the Ministry of Finance. The minister will be an expert. The president himself is not a novice, someone who is experienced with over 35 years experience in public service. So please, let us leave that for implementation. Let us not be pessimistic that because of the need for such exceptions is going to be abused.
All right, Mr. Tunde Lemo, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, joining us via telephone conversation from Scotland. We thank you very much for finding time to join us on for this program, and we do wish you have a good holiday.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
All right, we're back here in Abuja, and Kingsley, I'd like to ask, before we get back,
to respond to the question of potential abuse of the provider.
Let's not take it for granted. We can assume at all times exigencies could arise. That's the way we say it. So listen, one of the agencies in the massa, you name it, FROS, NNPC, so this is affecting us instead of us going around all the time. CBN is delaying us. Mr. President, let us have this. Or whoever the appropriate authority is, and then 1 becomes 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. How do we observe this?
Well, according to our good Igbo people, you don't give a goat yam to look after for you. It will not work very well. So for some of those who are, some of the big cases, NNPC for example, I would be extremely reluctant, because their historical trajectory on all kinds of accounts is not good. And that during the military time, things were so bad because even the government were colluding with the NNPC to open dedicated accounts with billions and billions of dollars that nobody knows how the money was spent. There were no proper mandates for those funds. So I would be very reluctant. But let's also get it very clear. In some of the systems that I have looked at in other jurisdictions, there are several sub-accounts, there are several ledger accounts, whereby quick disbursement can be made. So those kind of mechanisms can be put for some of those institutions. After all, if a pipeline is broken somewhere, you don't have to go to Treasury to seek up. The whole thing might be defeated. So you need quick disbursement mechanisms that the MDA can have access to. But those should be very few and far between.
Mr. Obor, I'd like you to respond to this also, this issue of the provider, abuse of the provider quickly, and also look at the issue of the sub-account linked to the CSC maintained by the CBN, and then another accounting system that enables these agencies to access funds based on their budgetary position. Mr. Lemon has said it's not contradictory.
First and foremost, let me tell my brother here that maybe when he was in England, he didn't know that the monetary policy makers have moved the CRR on public deposits from 75 to 31. They did that about 3 months ago, and we have been fighting that. Having said that, now let me tell you what I think is the problem here. In all these countries we are talking about, all over the world, public money has never been spent without appropriation. If there is a need, we go for supplementary budgeting. So that is what we shall be looking at, because if not, as Vera said, people will rush to the presidency and get more money. But it is unconstitutional for a president of a country or Nigeria to dip hand into the treasury without the legislative authorization. So that is where the contradiction is, because the Constitution says no government department, agency or ministry should spend money outside the appropriation. So I see this as contradictory, and I believe that at the end of the day we'll find a way to iron it out so that we ensure that agencies, departments do not spend outside the appropriation. That's why I've been suggesting that the need for fiscal sunshine here, so that it makes it obvious that any amount of money any agency or department spends or government spend must be made public, and people will see it transparently, and Nigerians can argue against or in favor of such expenditure. Your second question, can you repeat your second question, please?
To the CSA, and of course another accounting system that will be configured to enable them have access to the funds based on their budgetary position.
That's a nice question. You see, the problem here is that if you look at in 2013 February, the House Committee on Finance conducted a hearing where they wanted to see how these agencies, departments are remitting money. And it was discovered the accounting system, the type of accounting they present to the Fiscal Responsibility Commission was different from the one they presented to the Office of Auditor General. So contradict accounting system. As a result, because if you give account for the Office of Auditor General, you get less to pay to government. If you give higher to the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, you then can say that you need more money than from the government. So what I'm saying in essence is that the accounting system we're operating by the ministries, departments, and the agencies should be made to be in line with the international best practices, and it should be a system that is traceable, and a system that everybody who is in the accounting system, who cares to know, must quickly read it and understand it.
Very much. Gentlemen, just before we wrap up this conversation, I would like to return to the Lagos Network Center. This is a quick one for Mr. Etegwe. Ambassador Etegwe is also there, listening on this and respond after Mr. Etegwe. It's for purposes of auditing and so on and so forth. Let's say we've had a recent history of poor budgetary implementation. Virtually year in, year out, MDAs hardly achieve 50% of budget implementation. And the excuse at all times is that there are no funds. Now you have expressed a contrary view as to the utility of the TSA. Now if government now has a clearer view of what funds are available, might this not therefore help in raising, as it were, the level or percentage of budgetary implementation year in, year out?
Well, the fact that the government knows what money is there does not automatically mean that it will be used properly. Like if a few moments ago you could see Claire with the paper in her hands trying to see wave off the spirit. The truth is that the spirit is still there, and there is no other way to get things going other than to have good governance and control. And you will agree with me that institutional weakness, individual weaknesses, poor self-control, absence of spirituality in the workplace, all these things combine to earth corruption. And we need to start addressing them. Our problem is not making rules. The real control is not in the procedures that you write. The real control is in the people. We should pay attention to our people. One makes them, and like Dr. Malasia said, you don't give a goat yam to keep, but I believe that a goat that is properly spiritualized with self-control can keep the yam. It can keep the yam, and that starts with not keeping the goat hungry. But here you have a lot of hungry people whom you are putting in positions. You have a lot of people who have experienced injustice in the economic system of Nigeria. You are putting them in charge. You have a lot of people who have hopelessness as the only option in front of them. They cannot comply to control. Control can't work when somebody doesn't have hope, because a hopeless person psychologically has fear of the future triggered up in him. It triggers up self-defense mechanism. Somebody in that mode of self-defense his behavior becomes indeterminate. He's not subject to any control. In whether TSA or commercial banking or whatever, his spirit can go to that money.
Mr. Christian Etegwe, thank you, but I'm yet to see a goat that will spare any yam in the capture, of course, before it. But Ambassador Sejile, this is the last question to you, please, very brief. Now, the various MDAs have their finance and audit departments, and of course, they all have their clear rules of handling finances. Yet, the stories of money disappearing. Don't you also think that there is need to begin to look at how to deepen our accounting system.
Thank you, Claire. I've worked in the system as a Director of Finance and Supply. And I think one common thing that you see there is the issue of capacity. You need the right manpower, you need the right training for people in the finance and accounting department. Because if the head does not even understand what is required of him, I wonder where he will start from. Technology has made life so simple that we can capture some of these things easily. Like you said earlier, we look at the budgetary process. We need to start early. We need to have a proper budget office and have the MBAs key into this process. And we can build, what is a budget? It's a projection based on your past record. And from there we draw what will likely happen in the next financial year. And from our revenue profile, we can project where it will be. So the TSA will help sort out some of this. But beyond that, like my colleague said, the issue of the spirit. The spirit starts from capacity. You can conquer the spirit from building capacity, getting the right manpower there. It's the same Nigerians who have in the private sector who are doing excellently well. If you recruit the correct type of people with proper training, certainly we will get the right thing done.
Right, Ambassador Godsone Chojile, a financial consultant. Thank you very much. And also with you there, Mr. Christian Ekeje, who is a chartered accountant and chairman Audit Committee Institute. Both gentlemen, would like to thank you very much for joining us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
Appreciate the comment.
All right, well, we're back to Abuja studios. We'd like to also thank Mr. Odolin Wangbara. He's an economist. He's spoken very well this morning as always. Mr. Wangbara, thank you for being with us. And the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Bedaya Melafia. Dr. Bedaya Melafia, just before we say goodbye to you, you said you had something to say. 15 seconds. Can you manage that?
Well, yes, and that is to say that the TSA, I believe, will enhance budget execution because people cannot complain, oh, we are short of cash. Some of the systems are totally fungible. The pool of funds are there, they are fungible, they can be temporarily moved between departments. And because they keep the full accounts, they know what money should go where. And in fact, there's also monitoring because before the mandates for execution are approved, people will know it is for this purpose, it's for that purpose, for that project. And that is an indirect way of monitoring and to ensure, in fact, better budget implementation.
Well, Dr. Melafia, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, thank you for being with us as always. It's been a wonder.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Before we take our companion segments, we take a short break now.
Deco 175 grams family soap. Buy Deco family soap for 200 naira and save 50 naira.
Would you like some water? It's cold, especially for you. Which era are you living in? We have a fridge. When everything else in your house is from the present, then why are your toilet cleaning methods from the past? Harpic, all-in-one for you. Compared to other toilet cleaners, Harpic removes top stains, kills all germs, and removes bad odors. For a shining clean and fresh toilet. Wow! You should also take the Harpic all-in-one challenge. Nice and to taste like an awesome ride!
My Fanta tastes like catching the biggest air. My Fanta tastes like
fantastic! So what does Fanta taste like to you?
Grab your Fanta flavor today.
Alright, on to sports. The National Sports Commission is aiming to cash in on Nigeria's successes in the just concluded 2015 Special Olympics World Summer Games. So that, of course, happened in the United States. Mr. Adan Wahab is here. Tell us all about that story.
Welcome as we talk sport now. The National Sports Commission has assured Nigerians that it will build on the successes of the just concluded 2015 Special Olympics Summer Games in Los Angeles, United States of America, where Team Nigeria won 71 medals for the country.
The Director General of the Commission, Alazam Yakni, described the achievement as spectacular in the history of sports development in Nigeria, and this is the first of such records by the physically challenged athletes. Al-Azam maintains that despite their disabilities, the Special Olympics still proved themselves worthy ambassadors of Nigeria.
Nigeria on the limelight in the last couple of days, and I'm so happy to hear that Mr. President has accepted to host them. These are the kind of Nigerians that are the unsung heroes that over the years we have not had anything to do with, apart from the ones that are in the Paralympics.
The DJ said one notable feature of the tournament is the fact that it was sponsored by non-government organizations, thereby helping government to take the sports sector to the next level.
It was a kind of multilateral sponsorship arrangement that saw Nigerian athletes that have only one physical or mental challenge that are represented as reserved despite their disability. They were worthy ambassadors that have put Nigeria on the limelight in the last couple of days.
Out of over 160 countries that participated at the 2015 multi-sports event in Los Angeles, USA, Team Nigeria with 41 representatives won a total of 71 medals in the 7 sporting events they competed in.
And that's a bit of sports this morning. The program returns in just a bit.
Well, welcome, Wahab. Thank you very much there for the sports package. Let's take a quick look now at today's weather report.
We have a consistent rain in some places in Nigeria that cause flooding in those areas. As for today, we see what we have for you. Most places in the northeastern axis are expected to have localized sun. The storms will also affect some places in the central cities. The inland cities of the south are expected to have cloudy conditions, while the southeast coast will be having some rain showers. Later in the day, we expect this system to have moved westward, affecting Sokoto axis, some places in the central axis, especially the high-ground areas, while localized rains and rain showers will affect the southern regions. After temperatures for the day, let's take a look. Well, that's all we have for you from the weather. Just have a lovely day and see you again.
And that ends midweek edition of Good Morning Nigeria.